we're going to get started here. So if you want to grab some food before you sit back down, go ahead and do that. If you need to grab food in the middle of it, do that as well. It's no problem. Welcome to Innosphere. Ravi and I were talking. He was going to get up and he was going to introduce everything, introduce me. I said, let me just hop up. We'll get started. I'll introduce myself here in a moment. But glad you guys are here and excited just to both present, but also just have a conversation with you guys around today's topic. So let's get started. So on Tuesday, January 12th, 2010, at 4:53, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake hit Port-au-Prince, Haiti, causing, unspeakable devastation, loss of life, damage to infrastructure, challenging an already challenged nation. I was working at the time as a visual storyteller. I was a photographer, a filmmaker. I was a writer as well, working with organizations to tell stories from around the world. I was asked by a group in San Francisco to join them in traveling to Haiti. They partnered with a group there in Haiti, and they were going to help with recovery work, and they asked me to join them to help tell the stories of the recovery work, of the Haitians, and everything that was going on there. I was excited about that. It was an honor. It was an opportunity to go and tell stories, not only what was going on, the challenges they were facing, but also the stories of redemption and beauty and recovery. We traveled around the city to different locations, and we went to a particular location. It was a hospital. The building had been damaged. So you could look at the outside, and you could see this crack running along the outside wall because the whole foundation of the building had been damaged. So they had set up a makeshift hospital, a tent, and moved all the patients into there. The director of this organization in Haiti said, Shaloy, let's go inside this tent. We're going to talk to some people and want you to take some photos. Right off the bat, I was like, something felt a little bit weird. But off about that, I was like, well, okay, they asked me to do that, part of my job, so I went in and I started taking photographs. After about 2 or 3 minutes, a nurse walked up to me and he said, and this is something that has stuck with me since then and has been a catalyst for just how I try to live my life. But he said, I don't mind if you take photographs, but before you take a photograph of anyone, please ask them for permission to do that. And that kind of cut me to the quick, right? I mean, in hindsight, it's kind of like, that's kind of obvious. But in that moment, trying to do a job, going in, capturing these photographs, I had failed miserably. And I'm telling you the story, I feel like it's a little bit embarrassing for me, but to even tell that story, kind of looking back in the failures that I had as a storyteller. But one of the key failures that I had, or mistakes that I made, was that I missed kind of a fundamental question before I even started. And that's the question of, where's the human? Where's the human in this work that I'm doing? I was so busy thinking about taking pictures, capturing footage, composition, lighting, trying to capture the depth of the stories, that I forgot about the people whose stories that I was trying to tell. Ever since then, it has been a passion and a commitment for me in anything I do to always ask this question, where's the human? Who is the human? So what I want to do today is I want to talk about that question in the business world. Now, it might feel kind of intuitive to say like, well, of course, there are humans involved. We have customers, we have employees, we have users of our apps, we come into contact with a lot of humans, but amazingly enough, in the work that we do, oftentimes the human is either out there somewhere, or we say that's the user, that's the persona, that's whatever it might be, and we lose sight of where's the human in the work that we do. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about human-centered design and some of the principles that underlie that, and we're going to then kind of move that and apply that to the entire business. And we're going to talk about human-centered thinking in action as well. Just so that we can explore as a group, how can we transform the way we build, the way we lead, the way we innovate, keeping humans at the center? Okay, so let me make a quick note. You and your content is more important than me and my talk, okay? there's a little bit of a human-centeredness in that in the first place, right? Of saying, like, it's not just me coming up and giving you a bunch of information. You guys all have different businesses, different perspectives, different experiences. And so I want to make sure that we leave time today even for you guys to share your perspective of what it looks like to be a human-centered business, how you keep humans at the center of the work that you do. So we'll make sure we leave time for that at the end. So I'm going to kind of fly through a lot of this. Hopefully I find kind of the right level of, like, not just like fire hydrants throwing a bunch of information at you. But I'll share some of that, and then we'll have some time to talk toward the end. But before we do that, let me introduce myself. My name is Shun Loy Fong. Shun just like you shun someone, and Loy, as it says, rhymes with boy, koi, soy, right? Shun Loy. Three things about me. Kind of three threads in my life. You know, Steve Jobs once said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You have to kind of turn and look back and connect the dots in your life. And you have to trust that those dots will continue to connect as you move forward. And that's certainly been the case in my life. There's three threads to my work, that kind of that three-chord strand that cannot be easily broken. But number one is strategy. Like, I've always been very strategic in my thought and action and in the work that I do, coming alongside businesses, helping them develop and execute their strategies and operate in a strategic way. So that's number one. Number two is creativity. And I use that term pretty loosely or broadly in that, like, we're all creative. We're all created to create. And so we have creativity in our own ways. But I have a love for just, like, finding creative solutions to the wicked problems out there, to the really tough challenges. Those are the things that I'm very passionate about doing in my work. The third piece is shared experiences. I love bringing people together around shared experiences, collaborating, working together, having experiences together. Those are kind of three things about me, which have led to the work that I do. If I can get it to go forward. Might have lost it, Robbie. Where's it? Not there. All right, we'll get it figured out. I'm going to walk to that. I like walking anyway. My dad was yeah, exactly. I get my steps in. Plus, my dad was a professor, and he taught night classes, and he always taught me this trick. He's like, in night classes, like, he'd always walk back and forth, and you knew when, like, everyone's eyes were not following him, that he had lost them. So I try to walk a little bit. I don't know, this stopped working. I don't know. We'll see if we can get it going, Robbie. But anyway, so the work that I do, I have a company called Shared Humanity. It's a holding company that's really focused on creating, incubating, and growing community-powered businesses. Two of my businesses, the ones that I'm, like, largely focused on right now, one is Barkeep. It is a landing page design and development firm that's helping close the gap from first touch to conversion and helping companies connect with their potential customers, their leads through landing pages. Forge is a collaboration consultancy, and what we do is we bring human-centered collaboration and innovation to help teams solve their biggest challenges. So those are my two companies. So that's a little bit about me. Okay, let's see if this works. There we go. Okay, so human-centered. How many of you have heard of human-centered design? Okay, a few of you. How many of you have tried to, like, intentionally apply human-centered design to your work? Okay, a couple hands there. Great, good. Okay, so this might be new to a lot of you. So let's just talk through about what it is. Human-centered design is a design philosophy. It's a design approach, a creative approach to problem solving, right? But it starts with real people from the very beginning all the way through the end, keeping them at the center of the design journey. In every step of the co-creative process, and I say co-creative intentionally in the sense that we're not designing for someone out there, for people, we're designing with them, involving them in the co-creative process. Real people, their context, their aspirations, and their needs always need to come first. So a human-centered design approach is bringing this philosophy of always keeping human beings at the center, their needs, their aspirations, their challenges, keeping that at the center and designing solutions that meet those needs. So I'm going to talk about three principles of human-centered design, the foundational pillars, mindsets that you can bring to your work to help you do human-centered work, and then some kind of big bucket kind of methods and phases to human-centered design work. Now, I want to make a comment. Human-centered design there at the bottom is not just for designers. So if you heard me say human-centered design and you immediately checked out because you're like, I'm not a designer, this is not for me. It is for you. When I say human-centered design, I'm talking about any people who want to create solutions for tough problems, wicked problems, in collaboration with communities, with individuals, helping them thrive, flourish, and creating solutions that help meet their needs. If you love solving problems in that way, you're a designer in that sense, okay? So the foundational pillars of human-centered design, there's 4 that I want to mention. Number 1 is the people. Kind of obvious, human-centered design, keeping people, human beings always at the center. And it's not just that they're at the center, but they're also your starting point. Your starting point are people that you are wanting to create solutions for. The second one is the problem. You always want to identify and understand what's the root problem, right? It's really easy to kind of see a problem and say, oh, that needs a solution, right? And then you go create that solution. But it's really important with human-centered design, it's really important for design in general, like to dig deeper and find what are the root problems that need to be solved. For example, like let's say you're passionate about solving the epidemic of loneliness in America today. And so you say that is a problem, right? But there's kind of a question that is underneath that says, well, why are people lonely? Right? So digging a little bit deeper, like what problems exist that cause people to be lonely in the first place? So digging a little bit deeper, identifying the root problem and working to solve that. The third one is the system. Think of everything as a system, right? Everything's connected. Even human beings are connected. We're connected to each other. We're connected to our physical environment. We're connected to our natural environment. So we're connected in many ways. So you might create a solution in a very human-centered way that's solving a problem for real people, but that might create a new problem somewhere else because there's that interconnectedness. So you can't just say, sweet, I just created a solution for this. You wipe your hands, I'm done, let's move on. Like, you have to think holistically in systems. And the fourth one is the increments. Pursue smaller, simpler, incremental solutions. That doesn't mean you don't take moonshots, right? Like, you might have a moonshot you want to take, but in human-centered design, there's this idea of like testing, learning, iterating, solving those problems incrementally to work your way toward those big problems and solving those big problems. Again, thinking about things as systems, if you just go big and you solve this problem, like you're not going to always realize how the entire system is being affected. So these are the foundational pillars. Okay, human-centered mindset. There's a lot of mindsets you could develop, right, in your work. I'm sure a lot of you, most of you, some of these mindsets you already have. You just have them, you've developed them naturally, organically. But these are mindsets that I think are really important to help you think in human-centered ways, keeping people at the center of your design and innovation process. Okay? I'm going to start with deep curiosity, right? If you're not curious about the world around you, if you're not curious about the problems that exist, then you're kind of at a dead end right off the bat. So having deep curiosity about the world around you, the people around you, asking questions, why is it this way? Being curious about people, being curious about the problems, being curious about the world around you. Another mindset to develop that I think is core to human-centered design is empathy. We hear a lot about that in our culture today. It's kind of become even to the point of sometimes being a little bit of a buzzword. But there's a reason it becomes a buzzword, because there's a depth there and an importance there to learning to be empathetic for the people around us, right? If you own a business, if you started a company or you work for a company, right, you have a product or a service, being empathetic to the people for whom you've created those products. Seeking to understand them, their problems, their aspirations, their needs. Informed optimism. And I say informed optimism because I'm not talking about just like, everything's going to work out, right? It's all good, right? No, there's a grounded optimism. You don't ignore the fact that there are challenges, problems, there are bad things that happen, but it's grounded in the reality that, like, while these bad things do exist, we also believe that we can create solutions to these and being optimistic about creating solutions. So you have to be optimistic about the people, the problems, the world around you. The next one is countercultural collaboration. And when I say countercultural, the reason I say that is because having this mindset, a collaborative mindset, most companies will say we are highly collaborative. And for the most part, I call BS. It's not because they don't care about collaboration, but it's because collaboration is really hard. They aspire to that, I think most companies do, right? Anyone that has more than one person in their company wants to be collaborative, but it is really hard. And oftentimes the ways that we collaborate are actually not very conducive to collaboration, and actually oftentimes kind of create silos, which we have all experienced in different companies. So collaborating in countercultural ways that actually bring people together to innovate and work well together is an important mindset to have. Having a mindset of like bias toward action and making. So part of human-centered design, which we'll talk a little bit more about, is that it's very iterative. You're always testing and learning in incremental ways, testing, learn, test and learn, test and learn. So always having that bias toward action is, you know, kind of the traditional way in some places spend a lot of time thinking and planning. And it's not that thinking and planning is wrong, that's important, but oftentimes it's at the expense of like learning by doing. So having that bias toward action and making. The sixth mindset that I want to mention is embracing ambiguity. Anytime you're experimenting, you're trying to design something new, you're trying to innovate, you're entering into a world of ambiguity. There's a lot of unknowns out there. And you have to learn to embrace that and learn to navigate that if you're going to be able to push through to find the right solution for a given problem. And then the last mindset is embracing success and failure. Embrace success. Like, you got to define success. You got to know what it is, but celebrate it when it happens. It's a really good thing. But you also want to embrace failure. Anytime you have this rhythm of experimenting, making, testing, learning, you're going to have a lot of failures. You have a lot of failures not only in the solutions you create, but when you're collaborating in countercultural ways, you're going to have relational failures too, because you have a lot of different people coming to the table to collaborate. So there's a lot of failures that happen, but you got to learn to embrace that and view that as almost an experiment itself that you can learn from in that process. So these are some of the mindsets that I just want to call out. Some of them probably are like, yeah, that makes sense, right? And some of them, again, you're doing, but I think that, just one second. But I think like keeping these things in mind, having that mindset is really important to not only having the mindset, but to practice that mindset in real life. It's an important part of doing things in a human-centered way. Yeah.
Great, a great illustration. But my sort of question there is like some of these terms like empathy, radical empathy, empathy, optimism, and curiosity to some extent are kind of quite qualitative things, and you know your qualifiers imply sort of quantitative aspect of it. Is there?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, right? Because full transparency, when I put a slide like this together, there's a certain degree where I'm like, these all feel kind of obvious, right? And like, we know what the words mean. And words have meaning, ideas have consequences. So these things, each one of these, the way we understand them, the way we live them out, like has real consequences. But it'd be really easy to, there's kind of two sides for me, and I don't know if this is answering your question, but there's part of me that says, man, I could sit with each one of these and as a group, like kind of wrestle through, like, what exactly does that mean, right? Do we have a shared understanding of what that means? When we're trying to be doing human-centered design, like, do we all think about collaboration the same way, et cetera, et cetera? So we don't have time for that today, although I think that's an amazing conversation, and one that I wrestle with.
I still think countercultural is a great qualifier for collaboration, because that deals with that sort of understanding aspect.
Yes, and I was intentional in adding some of these qualifiers: radical empathy, countercultural collaboration, if for no other reason than to like say, oh, okay, wait, what is that? Because all empathy, optimism, curiosity, collaboration, like those are all words we use a lot, but I think they all deserve kind of deeper consideration of like, what does that actually mean? And how does that play out in the way that we try to solve problems? And so I add those qualifiers kind of intentionally to say, like, it's not just like, hey, be empathetic. Okay, yeah, be empathetic. Be radically empathetic. Ooh, what does that mean? And I think we all have to individually wrestle with that as well as collectively. Yeah.
I think it would be useful if you came up with exemplars of each of those that you can say, okay, here's an example. This behavior demonstrates countercultural collaboration versus.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Which is why I want to save time for the end, because there's two things. Number one is I'd love your guys' pushes on this, right? So if you're like, not buying that one, right? Like, yeah, it's okay, but I'm not so sure that's so important. But also like, okay, what's an example of what that looks like? So if we have time, let's return to that, because I think that's really good. Those are great call-outs from both of you. Thank you. Okay, human-centered methods. I'm a big fan of alliteration, so I'm going to go with the I's. I didn't make these up, but I think they do a good job of kind of creating these big buckets of like, what does it look like to go through a human-centered design process? Inspiration, ideation, and implementation. Inspiration is that kind of phase of work when you're getting out there, you're talking to people, you're observing, you're learning, you're identifying the challenges, you're framing the challenges that need to be solved, you're getting inspiration from the people that you're trying to create solutions for. That's that kind of inspiration phase. When you've done that, you can move into an ideation phase where you're coming up with solutions, ideas, you're prototyping them, you're testing those prototypes with real people, you're iterating on those prototypes. That's just that ideation phase to get lots of ideas out there, kind of converge on the ideas that you believe are the ones that are most worth testing out, creating and testing, and then iterating on that. Once you get to the point where you're like, okay, we think we've found a good solution for the particular challenge we're trying to solve, then you can go into implementation phase. In the implementation phase, that you develop it out, you're identifying partners, resources, timelines, how you're going to take this to market, right? That's that implementation phase. So when you think about like human-centered design, and as you kind of go through that process, co-creating with people, these are kind of the big bucket phases. But you're always going to be iterating on that. And these are not necessarily linear. You might spend a lot of time, like we could sit in this room, we can gather inspiration, we can have interviews, we can be talking about particular problems, and then we start ideating and we realize, and maybe we even prototype that. We might realize, like, you know what, we need to go back and spend some more time with the people that we're trying to solve problems for, right? So it's not you're necessarily inspiration, ideation, implementation linearly. You're going to be bouncing around based on the particular problem and how the process is going. Okay. I'm throwing a lot of these kind of ideas at you. There's how you kind of operate within these different buckets as a human-centered designer. We can talk a little bit more about, or if you have questions, we can talk more about that as well. But I wanted to just like put some of the principles of human-centered design kind of on your radar, especially if you hadn't heard of them before, that these, you know, foundational pillars, the mindsets that you develop, and then kind of the big buckets of phases that you go through when you're doing human-centered design. I want to kind of get those in front of you. One of the methods, too, I think that's helpful is that there's kind of this process of diverging and converging. And you're going back and forth, diverge, converge, diverge, converge. When you're in that inspiration phase, that you're spending a lot of time just like getting tons of information, right? A lot of interviews, a lot of perspectives, seeking to understand the people that you're trying to solve problems for. Whether you're creating a product, a service, an experience, right, that you want to understand the people that you're seeking to design for. So you do a lot of diverging, and then you start to converge, right? You start to focus in and make choices about what's the idea that we want to pursue? What's the solution that we want to prototype and test? And once you've done that and you get feedback, you might start converging or diverging again, saying, okay, we learned something, let's diverge again. So it's this iterative process that you go through in steadily making progress toward finding the right solution to the right problem for the people you're seeking to serve. Okay, let me just kind of talk about a couple examples of human-centered design in the wild. In the digital space, Spotify, I think, is a great example as a company that they have used human-centered design to engage people to understand how they purchase music, how they listen to music, how they discover music, how they share music, how they experience music. And that has helped to inform the app that they created. Going from, you know, back when iTunes first came out and you were buying songs one at a time, you know, changing the models for how people even engage and interact and gather music to experience. So Spotify is, I think, is one of my favorite examples. And the other thing that I love about how they use human-centered design is that it is very co-creative. So we as users, as human beings who use Spotify app, we're able to help inform how the experiences are created, how music is shared and discovered and things like that. So I think Spotify is an example there in the digital space. Another one that I wanted to mention was, this one was done a number of years ago by GE Healthcare, and there's a guy named Doug Dietz who designed the MRI machine for GE Healthcare. And he tells the story of how he once saw a little girl crying because she was about to go get an MRI on one of his machines. And that kick-started a process for him of realizing, like, the thing that I designed to help people, no one wants to get into, especially children. And so he actually took a human-centered design workshop, or attended one, and he started this process where he started visiting schools, daycares, talking to little kids, talking to teachers, talking to parents, talking to healthcare providers, seeking to understand how children think, what their needs are. When they're going to the hospital, like what jobs do they have to be done, right? What aspirations they have. And in that process of learning from these young children, redesigning the MRI, but also redesigning the experience of getting an MRI. And this picture is an example of that. And he was so successful in that, that kids would get their MRI and then he'd hear them on the way out and they'd be asking their mom, can I come back tomorrow and do that again? Right, because they had such an amazing experience. Probably not with the MRI itself, but the experience surrounding the MRI. So another great example of human-centered design. The next one I want to mention is Oral-B, and this was a number of years ago when a lot of toothbrushes looked the same, that they were exploring, like, how does a child brush their teeth and what kind of toothbrush do they need? So they went and spent time just sitting with 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds who were brushing their teeth, and they watched them brush their teeth, and they asked them questions, and they learn and observe. And what they realized, especially for the young kids, is as adults, we hold it with our fingers and we brush our teeth. But little kids with small hands, they usually fist things, like they put their whole fist around it. And so they realized, like, these thin little handles they weren't working well for kids. So that's when they created the thick handle. They also realized kids just don't like brushing their teeth. So let's start putting pictures. This is a little bit more recently, but let's start putting pictures of and design fun things on there to be fun for kids to brush their teeth. So I think another great example of human-centered design, of learning and co-creating with the people that would be using the product that they would produce. I'm going to skip that one for sake of time. Now, I do want to make a note. Again, when we talk about human-centered design, it's oftentimes easy to kind of get into the space up here of, like, the mindsets, the pillars, and those are all good. And there's a lot of work that has to be done to learn how to apply human-centered thinking to design projects, for example. But there's also real business value. There's really nothing new under the sun, right? So the human-centered design is not a new thing, and there's been enough research through the years to identify those businesses that have incorporated human-centered design into their approaches and their processes, that they've benefited from that, right? 32% higher revenue than traditional organizations that have not integrated human-centered design into their workflows. They deliver outcomes 2 times faster to market, and they ultimately outperform the S&P 500 by 211%. There's a lot of other statistics, a lot of other data out there from, like, McKinsey, IBM did some studies, DMI, but the bottom line is that, like, there actually is real business benefit. They're seeing business benefit in rethinking how they approach design and innovation projects. Yeah.
Just very quickly.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that customers, those numbers relate directly to not employees.
Yes. 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 Yep. Good call. Okay. So just kind of to wrap up talking about human-centered design, we believe that a solution is out there by keeping focus on the people we're designing for, asking the right questions, right? We'll get there. We'll get there. Again, some of this might feel kind of intuitive, but you guys can probably all think of, if you took a moment, you could probably all think of products that have been out there in the market that you're like, and they obviously did not talk to me when they created this product, right? Just one that my wife and I have been talking about that I would love to see redesigned. So if anyone wants to tackle this, food storage containers. I have no idea how I have lost 20 lids to 20 different food storage containers, but somehow I've managed to do that in my kitchen. Or when you're putting the lid in the dishwasher and it's done and you're taking it out and it's dripping water everywhere, right? Even little things like that, that you can bring a human-centered design perspective to create better solutions for the products we use every day, along with the big problems like the epidemic of loneliness. So the human-centered design approach is applicable kind of across the board, across the spectrum. So, okay. We're going to do an exercise. We're going to do a human-centered experiment. We're going to do a human-centered exercise that is a human-centered experiment. Okay, so it's a little bit of a meta here. Oftentimes when I lead workshops with Forge, we'll do kind of what I call a stoke, and just to do a quick exercise to start putting into practice some of the things that we're talking about. So here's what we're going to do. There's tons of human-centered exercises out there, right? Okay, this is your fire hydrant list of like, there's nothing new under the sun. Probably some of these overlap, right? Like there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of activate human-centered design. But I think on a fundamental level, kind of building off of the mindset, the pillars, right? Taking the time to listen to the people that we're seeking to design for, learning from them, learning to love them, their problems, goes a long way toward finding solutions. And then I think another component that I think is one very powerful way to find human-centered solutions is to play. Okay? You guys have maybe seen this. This is one of my favorite ads, actually. Lego, all it takes is 2 bricks to imagine an airplane. All it takes is 4 bricks to imagine a dinosaur, right? The simplicity of all those Lego bricks and the possibilities. I have 4 kids. My 2 younger ones are 7 and 4 years old, and I see that every day as they're playing with their Lego. And the things that they create, the wheels turning, even like innovating new solutions within their play. So the play is a powerful tool to use in human-centered design to find new solutions and to innovate, okay? So like Lego says, every Lego, I don't know if you can read it, every Lego brick tells a story, right? Build yours, okay? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take like 10 minutes. We might do it a little bit shorter just for the sake of time. But here's what I want you to do is I want you and 2 friends. If you don't have a friend, make a friend, okay? Get into groups of 3. At the ends of your rows are bags of Legos with some plates. Now, the plates are just there for your benefit, like dump some Legos on there so you're not spreading them all over the floor. If you do, that's fine. I'll pick them up at the end. You don't have to worry about it. But I want you to get into a group of 3, 2 or 3, okay? Grab a bag of Legos and a plate. Okay?
How do you join up? Turn your chair around.
Feel free to move your chairs, kind of circle up with your group. Okay, while you guys are doing that, just kind of keep listening, so we'll keep moving. So here's what you're going to do, is we're going to do 3 steps in this exercise. You're going to take about a minute as a group to discuss and understand the challenge and align the challenge. I'm going to give you 3 options, so you guys get to pick as a group, what challenge do you want to explore? So that's about 1 minute. You do that together. Then you're going to listen and empathize with one another. Ask questions. Listen like how each person experiences that challenge, some of the ideas they have, some of the wishes that they have, some of the context that surrounds their experiences with these challenges. You're going to do that for 3 minutes together. Then you're going to play. Probably not quite for 6 minutes. I'll probably stop you short of that. But for you introverts in the room, you're welcome. You get to do that alone. Okay. Now, in workshops, the research has shown, and we don't have to get into the whole idea of brainstorming and the power of brainstorming alone versus brainstorming in a group. But there's real power in being able to just get inside your own head and play as a part of the collaborative process, but doing it with people around you. So you're going to work alone, but together in that 3rd phase. So understand the challenge, listen and empathize, and then play. Now, apologies. My 4 and 7-year-old this morning helped me pull all their Legos into 20 bags here. You might have just a terrible collection, right? Which means you just get to be even more imaginative and creative. So, again, for the sake of the exercise, here's your challenge. It's the airport, okay? You have 3 potential ones. You can choose from one of these. Redesign the airport security screening experience, or redesign the airline boarding process, or redesign just the terminal experience. For those of us who fly, we can probably right off the bat start thinking of things that we just hate about the experience in an airport. And it's 2025. Come on, we should be able to solve some of these things. So you guys get to do that today, okay? So as a group, choose one. Take a few minutes just to listen and empathize with one another, get ideas, and then individually prototype. Any questions? Okay, let's get started. I'll call out when it's time. So you guys can pick a challenge. Yes. Yes. All right, 10 seconds to make your decision. All right. You've already made it, just keep on going. Listen, emphasize. Have an experience where okay, if you haven't yet, you should have chosen and you shouldn't be going into that second phase of listening, empathizing. It seems like it should have been a lot. We're phase 2, right? Yeah, like listen and empathize, yeah. So we want to build the main and low, or how do we want to, like, build the flow? So part of the box, we have to make attitude. Yeah, if you're all right, about 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds to talk together, and then Lego. Ready to put backpack on for my we're not doing a good yeah, that's the answer. Like, Okay, everyone listen up real quick. Listen up real quick. Okay. I want to make a couple quick comments. Number one, let's move into individual Lego creations. Okay, you're going to work by yourself quietly, so it should be really quiet in here. So there's no like collaboration. You work individually just to like, based on what you heard from each other, start building something that, you know, finds a solution or that starts to visualize a solution to a problem that came up from what you heard. Okay? The other thing is it can be literal or it can be metaphorical. It doesn't have to be a literal thing. And again, I know you're working with like limited time, limited Lego, so just have some fun with it. See what you come up with. You need more Legos? There's more bags up here. If anyone needs more Legos, let me know. I'll bring you another bag.
There you go. All right, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. All right, 1 more minute.
That's awesome. I'd just like to say,
Okay, let's go and wrap it up, gang. All right, while you're wrapping it up, the reason why I said this was a little bit of a human-centered experiment in doing a human-centered exercise is I've never done this in when I only have 50 minutes, right? So I was like, ooh, I don't know how this is gonna work out. But you guys did awesome in a very short amount of time. Usually when I do this kind of exercise, using Lego to play and innovate in a workshop, we have a whole day to do that, and a whole lot more Legos. So you guys, I mean, I don't know what you built, but you guys rocked it, being able to do this in 5 minutes. Okay. If you have something, if one of you created something that you want to share, save it. If we have time at the end, we'll have you share what you created. But hey, cheers to you guys, right? You guys just did some human-centered design, right? You led with curiosity, asking each other questions, understanding other people's perspectives when they're at the airport. Hopefully having some empathy there, right? Of saying ooh, I know what that feels like. I get a better sense of what it's like to be in your shoes. Maybe you're not a parent, and you talk to someone who's a parent, and you're like, ooh, okay, I better understand what it's like to be a parent trying to drag your kids through the airport terminal or what have you, okay? So, and then you guys collaborated together. In 5-6 minutes, you guys collaborated together. It was great. And then you acted, you started doing that, right? If we had more time, we do some we refine these prototypes, we test, we learn, we kind of iterate on that process. So, nice job. All right, back to our regular schedule programming. I talked about human-centered design as if it's this amazing thing, and guess what? It is. But I think what's amazing is some of the underlying principles that, when applied well, allows you to innovate amazing solutions to really tough problems. But human-centered design doesn't come without its baggage. One issue or criticism that people often have, and I think it's a fair one, is in the word itself, human-centered design. I kind of alluded to it at the beginning. Oftentimes people think the designer's over in that department, right? I'm not a designer, so we let them do human-centered design. So I think it's a little bit of a problematic label that was created a number of years ago. I think another criticism oftentimes is that when it's so focused on the human individual, that it becomes a little kind of egocentric of let's make a great experience for this user or for this human being, but they're not thinking about the systems in which they live. How does this product, yes, it made their life so much easier and it was a delightful experience, but it was terrible for the environment, right? Or it's not good for society, right? So oftentimes when human-centered design is applied, some of that systems thinking gets lost in the attempt to make this amazing product for a human being. There's other criticisms, there's other challenges. It's not a perfect system, but the reason I want to bring that up is because in these last few minutes, I want to transition it to say, human-centered principles, human-centered thinking is very powerful for solving tough problems. And if it's really powerful for solving tough problems, say in product design or service innovation or things like that, then surely it's also really valuable to apply to other areas of our life and other areas of our business. And so I want to propose that we start thinking about not just human-centered design, but we start thinking about human-centered business.
Hey, quick comment.
Yeah.
Back to your previous slide.
Yes.
All of those different quotes,
Yes.
most of those are born out of poor methodology. And if you use the right methodology, you can avoid without looking at all of them in detail, you'd probably avoid all of them.
100% agree, and that's a really important call-out, right? When I talk about criticism, from my perspective, and I think you're speaking to this, is it's not so much a problem with human-centered design, the methodology, it's oftentimes how it's interpreted and how it's applied. For example, when people are let's create this amazing plastic bottle, and we don't care if it's bad for the environment, that's bad human-centered design. Because we as human beings that use these plastic bottles, we live in our natural world, right? So we're impacted. All these things are impacted. So yes, I agree with you on that.
Just as an example, the dirty secret up there, if you're focused on just learning what from the humans that you interact with instead of the why, then you're asking the wrong question.
Yep. You're asking the wrong question. Oftentimes you end up making something that people say they want, which kind of goes back to the proverbial horse-drawn, what was it? With Ford, right? When he's if I asked people what they wanted, they'd ask for what was it?
A faster carriage, a faster horse.
Or faster horse, that's right, thank you, right? So it's like, sometimes people don't know what they want, right? And if we're not asking the right questions to dig deeper, into what they truly need and why they need it, yeah, we're gonna make some missteps in that process, for sure. Okay, so human-centered business, moving from a sometimes superficial process, sometimes we view this as a process, to more of a holistic way of thinking and acting. Now, the pillars, the mindsets, the methods, those all still apply. Those are powerful, and what I'm proposing is that we not just apply it to product design or product innovation or service design, but that we apply it to our entire business, and that we move it away just from being like, oh, that's for the designers over there, but that's for all of us and how we operate across our entire business. So we often talk about human-centered design, but what if we applied human-centered thinking to the strategies we create, right? Innovation, leadership, human-centered leadership, the communities we build, like co-creating communities help solve the right problems for them. Experiences, research, when we're doing research, when we're creating new technologies, how can we keep humans at the center of that? Culture, brand, ultimately, all of those coming together like being a human-centered business, that we take these principles and these ways of thinking and we apply it across our entire business. Okay, so here's my working definition for a human-centered business. It's a holistic way of thinking and acting that guides organizations toward creating better human experiences and fulfilling human purposes for all stakeholders, employees, customers, community, by applying human-centered design principles across all aspects of business and innovation to drive measurable positive business impact, yes, but also human impact. So when I think about a human-centered business, taking some of these kind of underlying principles and applying it to our business, this is what I'm talking about. And I think in today's world that's increasingly complex, that's moving really fast, technologies are changing really fast, the fundamental human needs that people have, whether they're an employee, a customer, the broader community, they largely stay the same. So when we bring a human-centered approach to all of our business, we can do some really powerful work. I'm going to jump past these. These are just like some what-ifs, like, you know, how might we apply human-centered principles to help us make brand storytelling a two-way conversation, right? So you can apply this like when you're creating your brand strategy, when you're creating your business model, when you're thinking about the culture of your business. How can we bring human-centered thinking to that? So these were just, I'm going to skip these. We can come back or share them with you guys later, but just for time. All right, the bottom line is human-centered business impacts all of your business. Okay. What time is it? Is it 1? Okay. You got to go, right? We're at the ending time. If you want to stick around, I'm happy to kind of finish out this presentation. So give me a couple more minutes, and I'll wrap it up. Some examples, and I'll just encourage you guys to look it up. IBM is actually a great example of a company that for the past, it actually started in 2013, so it was like 2013 through 20, that they were trying to figure out how do we bring human-centered principles and apply it across our entire business. They hired 20,000 designers, but they also had 100,000 employees that they were training in human-centered thinking and applying it in the different areas of their business. Another couple of examples is, especially around leadership and culture, is looking at Nadella at Microsoft, that, you know, he says care is the new currency, right? His philosophy is coming alongside the employees at Microsoft, connecting with them, listening to them, understanding them. He's a great example of human-centered leadership. Another one is Will Guidara. He wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. He former co-owner of 11 Madison Park, which is a fine dining restaurant in New York City, one of the best in the world. You're not always going to agree with everything you hear, but you've got to start by listening. And he's an amazing example. And if you read his book, you'll kind of learn about how he thought about, I don't know if he would call it human-centered leadership, but he practiced it, where he built a culture of collaboration. Front of the house, back of the house, they were all working together to explore what does it look like to do things with excellence, to be hospitable. There was a time when a girl came in at 11 p.m. frantic because she thought she was late for her shift. Her shift was at 9 a.m. the next day. She was so exhausted. They were working so hard that they, as a team, collaboratively, they took a step back and said, how do we solve some of these problems that we're experiencing, and yet still maintain the excellence that we do. So let's see the great picture of human-centered leadership. Okay, 3 human-centered takeaways that I would leave with you guys. Number 1, if you want to be more human-centered in your business, be an anthropologist. Right? Study people, observe, listen, spend time with them. Get to know different people, different scenarios, and different places. The more that you diversify your input, whether you own your own business, you lead a team, whether you're just an employee at a company that you're reporting to someone else, like diversify all those inputs. That's going to enrich your life. It's going to enrich how you solve problems for your stakeholders. Number 2 is be a collaborator. Reid Hoffman says, no matter how brilliant your mind or strategy, if you're playing a solo game, you're going to lose. You're going to lose to a team, okay? And, that's what I do through Forge, is like helping teams collaborate better, faster, accelerate their innovation using human-centered thinking, right? So that's a big one for me. Like, collaboration is key in order to solve the big challenges that you face in your business, or whether it's solving big challenges in our culture or anywhere in between. So being a collaborator and going back to that countercultural collaborator, that's a whole nother discussion to talk about what does countercultural collaboration actually look like. That's something that, and if you ever want to talk about it, let's grab a coffee, because I think that's a really important component. And that through Forge, that's what I try to help teams do. And be an experimenter. Like I want to be really clear, like being human-centered, again, in an hour's time, we can talk about it. It all sounds really good, but guess what? It's really freaking hard. It's not easy to apply human-centered thinking across your entire business. But it's worth it. And when you take that attitude of experimenting, if you go back to your business and say, okay, how can I bring a human-centered mindset to the culture that I'm trying to build in my company? How can I bring a human-centered mindset to how we approach our finances, right? Our business model, or what have you. It's worth just experimenting and figuring that out over time. Thoughtful experimentation is a lifelong journey into uncharted territories, right? There's going to be a lot of successes, there's going to be a lot of failures, but it's definitely worth it for your business, for the people that you come into contact with, your employees, your customers, the broader community. It's definitely worth it. So, bottom line, get started. Again, there's all this up here that I talked about, but there's the opportunity to go back to your business and say, how can I bring a human-centered perspective to all of my work? And how might that benefit your business, yes, but benefit the people that you work with, your employees, customers, and the broader community. All right. Thanks, guys.
Cool.